You're here because you want to know the real deal, the nitty-gritty, and we get that. So today, we are diving deep into the 2024 Yamaha Kodiak 450 ATV.
Yeah, we're going beyond just like what's on the surface.
Yeah.
We've got all the specs and features and comparisons,
Right.
everything you need to know.
We want you to walk away feeling confident, like you could go pick one of these up tomorrow and know exactly what you're getting into.
Exactly.
So when we look at the Kodiak 450, the overall impression is that it's a worker,
Yeah.
It's built for getting things done, whether it's around the farm or, taking it out for a weekend trail adventure. It's not huge, but it feels really capable.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is compact,
Yeah.
but I mean, from everything we've been looking at, it definitely feels like a very solid machine.
Oh, yeah.
And you can tell that Yamaha has a good sense of, who this ATV is for. It's versatile, right? So like, maybe you're hauling gear one day and then, you decide to hit the trails the next.
Right. That's exactly what this is made for.
So let's dig into the specs because I think that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
First of all, the engine, it's a 421cc. Liquid-cooled SOHC four-stroke engine. And that liquid-cooled part, I think, is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially if you're going to be using this thing, for hours at a time.
Right.
Especially if it's warm out.
Yeah.
You don't want to overheat, an air-cooled engine.
Right.
Having that liquid cooling is really going to help keep things running smoothly.
Yeah, it just means it's going to be more dependable.
Yeah.
And it's going to last longer.
Exactly.
So next we've got the transmission.
Okay.
Yamaha calls it their Ultramatic V-belt with engine braking. And I have a feeling people are going to like this because it sounds very user-friendly.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to worry about shifting gears manually.
Yeah.
And the engine braking is such a great feature. If you're going downhill.
Especially going downhill.
Or, you let off the gas and it just helps you slow down. It just gives you so much more control.
Absolutely.
And especially if you're on trails with some steep sections.
Yeah.
It's just such a great safety feature.
Definitely.
So then, of course, we've got the drive system.
Okay.
It's Yamaha's on-command four-wheel drive system.
Okay.
So you have the option,
Exactly.
to choose, what kind of traction you need at any given moment.
Yeah, it's all push button too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Super easy.
Yeah, it's a push-button system.
Yep.
So you don't have to, mess around with any levers or anything like that.
Yeah.
So if you're just, on kind of level ground, you can stay in two-wheel drive, probably get better fuel economy that way.
Right.
But if you need that extra grip, you just push the button and you're in four-wheel drive.
Yeah.
So moving on, fuel capacity is 3.7 gallons or 14 liters.
Okay.
Sounds like a decent amount.
Yeah. Ground clearance is 9.6 inches.
Nice.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, so that's great for, if you're going over obstacles.
Yeah.
You don't want to get high-centered.
Right.
Having that good amount of clearance is really going to help you out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Seat height is 33.7 inches,
Okay.
which seems pretty low, which I imagine makes it easier to get on and off for a wider range of people.
Yeah, it's going to be more comfortable for, more people of different sizes.
Yeah.
And it's good for stability, too, having that lower center of gravity.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about the suspension. It's an independent double wishbone setup, both in the front and the rear.
Okay.
6.7 inches of travel in the front, 7.4 in the rear.
Okay.
And, of course, independent suspension. That's a huge deal for comfort.
Yeah. I mean, each wheel can move up and down independently.
Yeah.
So when you hit a bump,
Right.
it's not going to jar your whole body.
Yeah.
It's just going to absorb it much better.
And you're going to have much better traction, too, because the tires are going to stay in contact with the ground.
Absolutely.
So towing capacity, get this, 1,322 pounds.
Wow.
For an ATV of this size, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Rack capacity, also very good. 88 pounds in the front, 176 pounds in the rear.
Nice.
So you can really haul a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Whether it's gear, tools, whatever you need to carry, this thing's got you covered.
You can definitely get a lot of work done with this thing.
Wet weight is 678 pounds.
Okay.
Which, again, for what it can do,
Uh-huh.
that's pretty nimble, it seems.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you've got dual hydraulic disc brakes on the front and the rear, which is good. You always want reliable stopping power.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about what's under the hood, how it's built.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the key features, because I think that's where Yamaha really shines.
Okay.
First of all, that ultramatic transmission we talked about.
Right.
Automatic, smooth shifting,
Mm-hmm.
strong engine braking.
Yeah.
It just makes the whole riding experience so much more, well, easier.
It really does, especially, if you're thinking about, like, if you're using it for work,
Right.
your focus can be on what you're doing,
Right.
not on having to, like, shift gears and all that.
Right.
So it's just very intuitive.
And of course, that engine braking just gives you so much more control on those descents.
Yeah.
Then there's the on-command four-wheel drive.
Uh-huh.
So we talked about that push-button system, and I mean, how much easier could it be?
It's very straightforward.
You don't even have to stop to switch between two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive.
Yeah.
If you feel like you're starting to lose traction,
Uh-huh.
you just hit the button,
Boom, you're in four-wheel drive.
you're good to go. So electric power steering, or EPS. Now, this is optional, but it sounds like a really nice feature to have.
Yeah.
Just makes the steering lighter, more precise,
Right.
really reduces fatigue, especially if you're riding for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially, you think about if you're doing like slow speed maneuvers, that can get pretty tiring on your arms after a while.
Yeah.
So having that EPS is definitely going to make a difference as
Yeah.
far as just, how long you can comfortably ride.
Right. Next up, we've got the compact chassis.
Okay.
And this is, it's designed to be narrow and well-balanced,
Right.
which just makes it easier to handle in those tighter spaces.
Exactly.
You're going through woods or, trying to navigate around obstacles.
Yeah. You need that nimbleness.
That's right. Now, we talked about independent suspension already.
Yeah.
But it really is worth emphasizing because it makes such a huge difference,
Absolutely.
both for comfort
Mm-hmm.
and traction.
Yeah.
Especially, if you're on uneven ground.
Right.
Each wheel can kind of do its own thing
Yeah.
and absorb those bumps independently.
And it helps you, like, maintain control.
Exactly. Those durable cargo racks,
Yeah.
we talked about the capacity, but I think the key takeaway here is that they're built for real work.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're not flimsy. They're not going to break on you.
Yeah.
And you can really load them up.
Yeah.
And they're going to hold up.
Definitely.
So, if you need to carry supplies, if you need to carry tools, whatever it is, these racks are up to the task.
Exactly.
And finally, we've got to talk about the ergonomics.
Okay.
Because, you can have the most powerful ATV in the world,
Uh-huh.
but if it's uncomfortable to ride,
Yeah.
you're not going to enjoy it.
No.
So Yamaha is really focused on making this a comfortable machine.
Yeah.
So the seat's low, the footrests are wide,
Yeah.
the riding position is natural. It's just designed to be comfortable for long rides.
Exactly.
And I think that's really important. And another thing that's interesting,
Okay.
the rear brake
Uh-huh.
is sealed.
Yeah.
So it's a wet brake system,
Right.
which means it requires less maintenance,
Uh-huh.
and it's going to be more durable, especially if you're riding in muddy or wet conditions.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really smart design feature.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the Kodiak 450 in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's see how it stacks up against some of the competition.
Okay.
So we looked at three main competitors: the Honda 4-Tracked Rancher, the Polaris Sportsman 450 HO, and the Can-Am Outlander 450.
Okay.
Let's start with the Honda. So, compared to the Honda, the Kodiak offers better cooling, more ground clearance, and a higher towing capacity.
Okay.
However, the Rancher is a little bit lighter,
Yeah.
and it is less expensive.
Right.
But it doesn't have electric power steering
Uh-huh.
or automatic engine braking.
Yeah.
So it's really a trade-off.
And-
Are you on a tight budget and you're looking for something light?
Oh.
Or do you want those extra features and that extra capability?
Yeah.
It really comes down to your needs and priorities.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now, the Polaris Sportsman 450 HO, this one's got a larger engine
Okay.
and a higher towing capacity
Right.
than the Kodiak.
Uh-huh.
But the Kodiak is known for having a more predictable four-wheel drive system.
Right.
And just overall, probably better long-term reliability.
Yeah.
So again, do you want raw power?
Yeah.
Or do you want something that's just going to be dependable and predictable?
Yeah. That's a good distinction.
Yeah. It really depends on what you're going to be using it for.
Exactly.
And finally, the Can-Am Outlander 450.
Okay.
This one's got a stronger suspension
Okay.
and a more modern design.
Mm-hmm.
But the Kodiak, again, it just excels in that simplicity.
Yeah.
and ease of maintenance, that
Yeah.
rugged feel.
Right.
So it's kind of a classic versus modern kind of comparison.
Uh-huh.
Do you want all the bells and whistles?
Yeah.
Or do you want something that's just going to be rock solid and easy to work on?
Right.
So it's a tough choice.
Yeah.
But I think the Kodiak holds its own
Yeah,
in
definitely.
terms of what it offers.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about the design.
Okay.
Because, aside from the specs, I think this is where the Kodiak really shines.
Okay.
It's a very tough, compact, functional design.
Yeah.
It's not flashy.
Uh-huh.
It's not trying to be a sports car.
Yeah.
It's a workhorse.
Right.
And it looks like a workhorse.
Yeah.
But it's well designed.
Uh-huh.
It's got those wide fenders to keep the mud off of you.
Yeah.
It's got a low, flat seat for stability.
Uh-huh.
The controls are all easy to use, even with gloves on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is important if you're working.
Right.
You don't want to have to take your gloves off every time you need to adjust something.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a digital display, which is nice.
Okay.
Gives you all of the essential information.
Right.
Your speed, your fuel level, things like that.
Yeah.
And then some other really smart design features,
Okay.
like a sealed air intake.
Yeah.
So
Hey.
if you're in dusty or wet conditions,
Mhm.
it's going to keep running smoothly.
Yeah.
The battery and wiring are all protected.
Yeah.
The cargo racks, we talked about them, but they're steel. They're strong.
Yeah.
They've got multiple tie-down points,
Mhm.
so you can really secure your load.
Yeah.
And then Yamaha has also made it very easy to add accessories.
Okay.
So, if you want a winch, if you want to plow,
Uh-huh.
whatever it is, they've got you covered.
Yeah, that's great.
There's even a 12-volt outlet already there.
Oh, nice.
So, if you need to power something, you can just plug it right in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think all of that just speaks to, Yamaha's attention to detail and really understanding how people are going to use this ATV.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up,
Okay.
let's just quickly go over some of the advantages again.
Okay.
So, proven Yamaha durability,
Uh-huh.
that smooth automatic transmission,
Right.
button-controlled four-wheel drive, very easy to use,
Yeah.
comfortable ergonomics. We
Yeah.
talked about how comfortable this thing is to ride.
Yeah.
Option for electric power steering if you want it.
Mm-hmm.
Easy maintenance. It's a very straightforward machine to maintain.
Right.
Lightweight and nimble feel.
Yeah.
And just overall excellent value.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a lot for your money with this ATV.
It does seem like a very well-rounded package.
Yeah,
They
right.
didn't really cut any corners.
They did it.
They focus on what's important,
Yeah.
and I think they did a really good job.
Now, of course, we have to be fair
Mhm.
and mention some of the potential drawbacks.
Okay.
So, it's not perfect for everybody.
Right.
First of all, the engine is on the smaller side.
Yeah.
So if you need a ton of power,
Right.
or you're going to be doing a lot of high-speed riding,
Hmm.
this might not be the ATV for you.
Yeah.
Power steering is not standard.
Right.
It's an option.
Yeah.
So that adds to the cost.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an extra expense.
The instrument panel is pretty basic.
Yeah.
It's not going to give you a ton of information.
Mm.
And it's really designed more for work and trail riding.
Yeah.
It's not a speed demon.
Right.
So if you're looking for something to go fast,
Yeah.
this is probably not it.
Yeah. Good point.
Not a ton of color options.
Okay.
So if you're really into the aesthetics
Right.
and you want a lot of choices,
Uh-huh.
that might be a drawback.
Yeah.
And not all models come with independent rear suspension.
Oh, okay.
So if you get a lower trim level,
Yeah.
the ride might be a little bit rougher.
Right.
So those are just some things to keep in mind.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but it's a really solid machine overall.
Yeah. Definitely.
Now, we get a lot of questions about ATVs in general.
Uh-huh.
So let's just run through some frequently asked questions
Okay.
just to kind of cover all our bases here.
And
So first of all, is this a good ATV for beginners?
mm.
And the answer is absolutely yes.
Yeah.
It's very user-friendly.
Yeah.
It's easy to control.
Right.
It's stable.
Yeah.
Yamaha's done a really good job of making this an accessible machine.
Yeah. Definitely.
Now, does it come standard with power steering? No, it does not.
Okay.
Power steering is available on certain models as an option,
Right.
but it's not standard across the board.
Okay.
Can it handle towing heavy loads?
Hmm.
Yes, it can.
Okay.
I mean, we talked about that towing capacity, 1,322 pounds.
Yeah.
That's pretty significant.
Mm-hmm.
Is it suitable for trail riding?
Mm.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, it's light, it's nimble, it's got good suspension travel.
Yeah.
It's going to handle those trails with no problem.
Yeah.
Now, this is one we get a lot where what's the top speed?
Uh-huh.
And, this is not a speed demon like we talked about.
Right. Okay.
It's geared more towards power and control.
Mm.
So you're probably looking at somewhere in the range of 50 to 55
Right.
miles per hour
Okay.
tops.
Yeah.
So don't expect to be winning any races.
Right.
But, for trail riding, for work, it's plenty fast.
Yeah.
Can you easily add accessories?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Yamaha has made this thing very accessory friendly.
Hmm.
So like we talked about, winches,
Mhm.
plows, all kinds of things that are easy to add.
Yeah.
Is maintenance a hassle?
Mm.
And the answer is no.
Okay.
Basic maintenance is very straightforward.
Yeah.
It doesn't require a lot of specialized knowledge or tools.
Uh-huh.
If you're comfortable doing basic maintenance on a car,
Right.
you can probably handle this ATV.
Yeah.
And finally, the question everybody wants to know,
Uh-huh.
what's the price?
Yeah.
So typically, prices start around $6,999.
Okay.
Now, if you want power steering,
Yeah.
that's going to add to the cost.
Right. Yeah.
But the base model, $6,999,
yeah.
that's a pretty good starting point
Yeah, definitely.
for an ATV of this quality.
Yeah, I mean, for everything that it offers, that's very competitive.
So to sum it all up,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's safe to say that the 2024 Yamaha Kodiak 450 is a real contender
Uh-huh.
in the utility ATV market.
Yeah,
It's got a great combination of power, comfort, reliability, and value.
exactly.
It's a workhorse, but it's also fun to ride,
Uh-huh.
and it's built to last.
Yeah.
So I think Yamaha's really hit a home run with this one.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think, whether you're a farmer, a hunter, a trail rider, or just somebody who needs a dependable machine to get things done around the property,
Yeah,
the Kodiak 450 is definitely worth a look.
absolutely.
So here's a thought for you.
Okay.
We've thrown a lot of information at you.
Yeah.
Now, we want you to take all of that and really think about how it would apply to your specific needs
Mm-hmm.
and how you would use this ATV. Don't just focus on the specs on paper.
Yeah.
Think about, what kind of work you would do with it, what
Right.
kind of trails you would ride,
Right.
how it would fit into your life.
Yeah.
And then decide for yourself,
Uh-huh.
is the Kodiak 450 the right ATV for you?
Yeah.
We think it's a great machine,
Uh-huh.
but ultimately, the decision is yours.
Right.
So thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.